Any sort of questions or comments so far in regards to what you guys have heard?
I've heard you speak before eloquently, Joel, about not reliving the trauma that people have had and just re-suffering that. I don't know if it's something else that you can sort of elaborate on a little bit more. And there is a warning on this. I have another call that I need to go to for 7:15. So hence me being greedy and getting my question in first. So apologies.
No worries. Just say that again. Sorry, the question. I do apologise.
Yeah, no worries. You've talked before. I've listened to you before, and you've talked about not subjecting somebody to going through the same trauma of having to
Yes,
re-describe something
yes,
that's happened to them in the past. And that's a really
yes.
powerful hook that people can then be brave enough to say, if I'm not going to be subjected to, then my past isn't necessarily going to always affect my conversation or my presence with another.
Absolutely true. And that's the beauty of one of the aspects of Rewired for Men, where it's like I said, by not having to talk about the story means there's no emotional triggering, there's no physical reaction to that will shut the person down. And very much all the information what I work with is not only about getting to the root cause without having to talk about it. It's going for I guess, the key words, key categories. So what I mean by that, Nick, is like, for instance, part of what I do is looks at the family. So it's about actually literally rewiring the association, what the word family is, or mum, dad, brother, sister, just by the words. Don't need to talk about anything else because the physical body is beautiful for the individual because it indicates to them without having to go into lots of detail and traumatize those with big physical reactions that there's a story playing in the head. And you can get to the root of that and guide the individual to do that without the need to take them out of that experience externally into words that then leads into obviously all of the problems and distractions and emotional triggering from that degree. And and when you have got to that root cause, it doesn't come back. You know what I mean? It's not a magic eraser, Nick, to erase out, that whole thing that happened, whatever that event was. If anything, it just gets processed away into the memory. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb or a hot coal. But also the beauty of it, Nick, is it's an accumulative effect. So when you rewire one story, there's more than likely other stories that are connected to it, hence what I was saying about before. The only way I can describe it is our brains are like Christmas trees in a way and carrying all these stories. And when someone says something to us or we see something or hear it, the brain lights like a Christmas tree. So by getting to the fuse of the plug, put it that way, all the lights don't go off like a Christmas tree. So it's that cumulative effect, really, of what happens by getting to that root cause. And then after that, you are not only are you not being triggered, affected, whatever you want to what term you want to use, by your own unhelpful stories because they're not there anymore. You're not impacted by other people's either, and that's the other beauty of it. It's that whole thing where we can't control other people, but we can influence them by what they see in you, what they feel from you, whatever phrase you want to give it from that perspective. And that is very evident in regards to what is modeled then around you. And when you are not playing the stories in your head, you can actually get into the space of where we all have access to, which is our natural state of presence, our mojo, whatever phrase you want to give it. And we've all experienced what I mentioned before, Nick, at those fleeting times of it. What would it be like for that to be a more constant state? Of when you are in that constant state, you are more emotionally regulated. As you say, stuff might still happen around you, and stuff that happens around you might still be bad or whatever, but you'll be coming from a more settled place. You'll be coming from a more regulated space. You'll be able to find solutions a lot quicker. But also in those times as well where there is that place of problem solving, the answers come quickly. because you already have them inside of yourself.
Yeah, I take your point that the answers are in there at the moment, but people are relentlessly and punishing themselves with repeated thinking cycles, and it's a
Yes,
horrible life cycle because it doesn't come to an end, and that's the endless thinking that they do. And I
yes,
think a lot of people crave taking themselves out of that thinking, having lucid, discrete thoughts that they can
yes,
then do something about, make them boundaried and do something with them rather than this relentless torment.
yeah. And the irony of it is as well, Nick, in regards to that torment, the only person who's tormenting the individual is themselves. Do you know what I mean? And it's the person who created it, but it's also the person who can rewire it and change it.
Mm,
You
mm.
know what I mean? The power is within the beholder, isn't it? From that degree, and very much that's what Rewired for Men does. It's not, without going too far out there. It's not just this dimension of the physicality of it. We are as individuals made up of mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, whichever term you want to give that, it's entirely up to you. So it's not just one part where Rewire for Men works with. It's the whole thing of what makes each of us who we are from that degree.
Yeah, and I'll make one last point before I give the floor to others.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you
of
you
course.
you talk about the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and so on. The number of times I talk with people and they talk through a problem, and you can tell it's relentless. But then I try and calm them sufficient to say, where is it? Can you point to it? Do you ever see it ever again? And they don't,
Yes,
which goes exactly to your point. It's from here up. It's within us, it's not around us. And
yes,
there's two ways of describing that. One is the conventional spelling of it's out there in the universe. Well, it isn't. It's out there in the
yeah,
universe.
yeah.
And therefore, that's where the concentration needs to be. Anyway, I will give the floor to others because I've rather hogged it.
No, no, it's absolutely fine, Nick. I think they're very useful comments, and by all means, leave when you need to leave. And this is what it's about. It's the input of arriving at that place with that. So I really appreciate that, Nick. Thank you very much. And sort of in regards to, I guess that sort of nicely segues into, I guess, giving a brief flavour, really, in regards to where I've landed at, which is where another point of the beauty of Rewire for Men comes in, is time and cost efficient. As men, we have busy lives, and I use the word busy in brackets because everybody's different from that degree. So Rewired for Men is being put together in a program that is time efficient. And it's time efficient from the perspective wherever you are now to reach what Rewired for Men will allow for every man who takes part in it in overall a 4 hour program. And the 4 hour program is made up of two 90-minute sessions and one 60-minute session. And again, I've kind of touched a little bit on how this sort of overall sort of idea of Rewired for Men works. So the first session is really get an idea of what is the program and condition state. What is that? Well, a lot of people go around and think it's normal to be in a state of fight or flight all the time, or stress or whatever, and that's part of being life. And it's really interesting. Somebody said the other day was, part of being ADHD is you're going to have burnout, and that's just life. It's like, well, no, it's not. It's not life at all, and neither is ADHD, and that's a different story as well. And again, that's that power of those stories that we tell ourselves. So our first session is really starting to become aware of this normal state and the state of presence. What I've talked about, state of awareness, whichever word you want to give it, and really starting to drill into the senses and the family-based narratives that we carry. Session two grows on that more, starting to really get into what impacts a lot of men, which is around these stories of limiting beliefs around finances, relationships, and general well-being. And then the third session generally then goes into how are we going to take that forwards in regards to applying that skill every day, picking up other tools to go along that in regards to managing potential emotional triggers that may still come up in regards to new events that we experience in our life. if anything, the very much essence of Rewired for Men is it's an action-orientated approach that achieves results without requiring men to speak about the past. And more importantly, I've made it as practical as possible to bring around that practical transformation and emotional freedom.